when Esteban Torres asked for a North American development bank. Right? He got a North American development bank, a rather small North American development bank. But still, you had $6 billion of border infrastructure development that would not have otherwise taken place. And that in some other possible world, right, certainly my bosses and certainly Bill Clinton would have much rather have been able to do something, regional integration with significant development funds. But this is 1993. This is deficits that we then thought were extraordinarily high and needed to be cured immediately. And I think Mexico would have become second and third. That after all, if the United States had spent, how much, $5 trillion of today's dollars defending ourselves against the Soviet Union for the previous 40 years, shouldn't we have been willing to spend $100 billion on kind of helping the Soviet Union kind of democratize and make the transition? That $50 for bombs versus not even $1, 20 cents for development seem to be our high priorities.
It's not too late. It could still be included, but it's not on the political agenda.
No, it's, well, maybe after November. I say the current, how was it? It was President Lagos last Thursday saying that for the next 2 years or so, his fondest hope is to be totally, Latin America is totally ignored by the because when the Republican Party focuses on it, well, let's get a border fence and throw out a bunch more people. And even though here, where the Bush administration has been trying to tame the demons its political arm was raising. So ask me in 2009, when you can rethink. Yes?
Two questions. In terms of the talk in Washington at the time, I mean, the one sort of immobile factor, or relatively immobile factor, was going to be labor. And when we knew the Mexican agricultural sector would get a big shock, I mean, shouldn't the friends in Mexico have been saying we should be standing on the border with, with work visas, handing them out with ice cream cones? So that's question one. And then two is, you talked a lot about the trade side, but on the capital account side, sort of what happened with Mexico? Did Mexicans, sort of small savers in middle-class towns, take their money and put it in the United States? Did that have an effect on sort of local capital markets?
As the person who built various models, which did genuinely show that the increase in manufacturing employment in America was likely to draw both labor from the Mexican countryside and some Mexican labor back across the border. We weren't terribly worried about increases in legal or illegal immigration from Mexico. Right? And of course the fact that we're economists. And we think that if you move someone from say Ciudad Juarez to El Paso, you move a 25-year-old male from Ciudad Juarez to El Paso, and you've boosted lifetime world GDP by on the order of $500,000. Right? We economists have a very hard time resisting calls for increasing pace of immigration, even with all the effects on domestic U.S. income distribution and so forth. I think largely because we're confident, we're very confident, that what immigrants bring in the way of culture to America is very valuable. And that, if you can't, you want to both move the capital to where the people are and the people where the capital is. So I think the first part of my answer is we didn't worry about it that much. And what was the second part of the question?
You didn't worry about it in the sense that, why wasn't it part of the plan to kind of make, facilitate that movement? Could it have been? Well,
because it was because Newt Gingrich said that no Republican would vote for it if 100 Republican representatives didn't, if 100 Republican representatives, or rather he said that unless if 100 Democrats voted for it, he would promise 150 Republicans. But that required that Clinton do nothing to get them upset. And to say that we were planning on increased immigration from Mexico would have gotten them upset. Even though we weren't planning on increased immigration from Mexico, and I didn't even have to spin the models at all to reach that conclusion. It genuinely seemed that we would have sufficiently strong employment growth in northern Mexico to soak up. You know, as to where the export surplus, well, I mean, look, I have very nice, my lifetime analytical data, as I said before, comes with a small critique I wrote of Rudy Dornbusch and the Frey Sturzenegger paper in 1993 about the long-run trade balance between the U.S. and Mexico. And I was saying, hey, look, NAFTA passes. All of a sudden, you're going to have $30 billion a year or more of potential capital flowing out of the U.S. looking for a relatively low-wage export platform with guaranteed tariff quota-free access to the largest consumer market in the world. That's got to make the chances of a peso crisis much, much less, because that's a lot of dollars searching for pesos. What I missed was that when NAFTA comes, you also have $40 billion a year of money from rich Mexicans heading north. Right? Heading north on the grounds that a bank account in Citicorp is a much nicer thing than something held in Mexico City. And this is true not only if you have to flee Mexico for the next revolution and paddle across the Rio Grande. This is also true if you think of any of the remarkable number of things that governments can do to bank accounts that they control. You know, something like the little corral that the Argentinian government put around the savings of all Argentinians when the crash came in Argentina at the end of 2001 was greatly, greatly resented. And getting your money across the border into New York was something that many more people wanted to do than I at least had imagined possible. And that flow has continued. That kind of flow is one of the things determining the current configuration of global imbalances. That there seem to be a lot of people and a lot of governments that think that moving their money into the United States is a way of buying some form of political risk insurance. And that came as a surprise. Yes?
You mentioned that despite China, the exports from Mexico to the U.S. have increased dramatically.
Coupled, yes.
So something else must be going on in the sense if the Mexican economy isn't growing. Have the exports from the U.S. to Mexico increased comparably?
Well, yeah, but they're largely things that Mexico needs to industrialize. And I'd say that the volume is one thing, the price is another. Margins on Mexican exports to the U.S. are far below what anyone expected they'd be 12 or 13 years ago. Right, precisely because China is sitting on the sofa of export-led development and pushing everyone else off. They imagined they'd be selling electronics and auto parts, and still are selling auto parts, electronics and textiles for much higher prices, and it turns out that they can't.
On behalf of the Center for Latin American Studies, if you're interested in further events on Mexico, I encourage you to come to hear Manuel Camacho Solis speak at 6 p.m. on Wednesday. He'll be speaking at 141 Macone. He is a key advisor to Lopez Obrador. We also have a screening that evening of Los Inocentes film as a part of our Cine Latino series. Thank you for coming. We'll look forward to seeing you.
Sarah, before we break, when do we give the award for the best title of the year to Professor DeLong?